Saurian blades dripped with the lifeblood of slaughtered innocents. The reptilian warriors showed no mercy as they carved a path of carnage through the human settlement on New Horizons. Flames engulfed prefab shelters, smoke choked the air, and the anguished screams of the dying echoed across the blood-soaked soil. Amidst the chaos, Captain Will Bennett led his squad of United Earth Defense Force commandos in a desperate counterattack. Plasma bolts sizzled past as they charged the Saurian line, the acrid stench of burnt scales and charred flesh assaulting their nostrils. Bennett's second-in-command, Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov, took a glancing shot to the shoulder, his armor sizzling. The commando gritted his teeth and pushed forward, blasting a Saurian trooper point-blank with his pulse rifle. The Saurian surprise strike had been devastating, their advanced weaponry and superior numbers overwhelming the colony's meager defenses. Bennett knew that New Horizons was just the beginning. The reptilian bastards sought to subjugate humanity, to crush their spirit and claim dominion over every world mankind had fought so hard to colonize. But the UEDF would not let that stand. Earth did not pay tribute to alien overlords. If the Saurians wanted humanity's colonies, they would pay for every inch of ground in blood. Petrov's sacrifice bought the colonists precious time to evacuate, and as Bennett's squad fought on, one thing was certain. This was only the first battle in a war that would decide the fate of humanity among the stars. And come hell or high water, Captain Bennett and the UEDF would make the Saurians regret ever setting foot on human soil. The Indomitable's engines rumbled as the warship tore through the void, carrying Fireteam Omega back to Earth. In the training bay, Sergeant Reyes's fist slammed into the padded mitts on Bennett's hands, demonstrating a brutal Saurian chokehold countermove. Sweat poured down the commando's face as she pivoted, leveraging her attacker's weight against them. "Faster!" Reyes barked. "The Saurians won't hesitate. Neither can you." Across the bay, Corporal Kaderi hunched over a workbench, modifying their pulse rifles to cycle faster in Kilar's dense atmosphere. The acrid scent of solder and ozone filled the air. Private O'Connor watched intently, his brow furrowed. "You think these upgrades will be enough?" O'Connor asked, fingering the grip of his weapon. "I mean, we're going up against the full might of the Dominion." Kaderi glanced up, his dark eyes glinting with tenacity. "We'll make it enough. We have to." In the Indomitable's command center, Admiral Graves and Dr. Elijah Sorensen pored over a holographic display of Kilar's surface. Red icons denoted known Saurian strongholds, while a pulsing blue marker indicated the suspected location of the keystone. "If your theories are correct, Doctor," Graves rumbled, "securing the keystone could be the key to humanity's survival." Sorensen nodded grimly. "The Saurians have held the technological advantage for too long. It's time we level the playing field." As the Indomitable approached Earth, Fireteam Omega gathered for their final briefing. Bennett stood at the head of the room, his face hardened. "Our mission is simple," he growled. "Infiltrate Kilar, gather intel, locate the keystone, and give the Saurians a taste of their own medicine." The commandos nodded, their expressions hardening. Each knew the risks, the sacrifices they might be called upon to make, but they also knew what was at stake. Rhea stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "For every innocent slaughtered on New Horizons, for every world the Saurians have raised, we fight. For a future where our children don't live under the shadow of Saurian oppression," Kaderi added, his voice thick with emotion. O'Connor's fist clenched. "For the chance to prove that humanity will never surrender." The captured Saurian supply ship shuddered as it descended through Kilar's atmosphere, the alien world's crimson landscape stretching out before them. Fireteam Omega stood on the bridge, disguised in the drab uniforms of Saurian slaves. The stench of reptilian musk filled the air, mixed with the acrid tang of industrial pollutants. As the ship approached the spaceport, a Saurian patrol vessel slid into view, its hull dripping with weapons. "Unidentified vessel, transmit identification codes immediately," a rasping voice crackled over the comm. Kaderi's fingers flew over the ship's controls, sweat beading his brow. The seconds ticked by, each feeling like an eternity. Finally, the patrol vessel's comm crackled to life once more. "Identity confirmed. Proceed to docking bay Theta 6. A collective sigh of relief passed through the team, but as the supply ship descended towards the spaceport, passing beneath the towering statues of Saurian warriors that loomed over the city, Bennett knew their true test was only just beginning. Humanity's fate hung in the balance, and Fireteam Omega would stop at nothing to tip the scales in their favor. The supply ship's landing struts groaned as they touched down on Killar's scorched surface. Bennett's pulse quickened as he led Fireteam Omega down the loading ramp, their eyes darting beneath the hoods of their slave disguises. The spaceport bustled with activity, Saurian overseers barking orders, slaves scurrying to unload cargo, and the occasional crack of an energy whip. "Remember," Bennett whispered, "we're nobody. Keep your heads down and stick to the plan." They split into two teams, melting into the crowd. Bennett and Reyes headed towards the industrial sector, while Kaderi and O'Connor made for the research district. The acrid air burned Bennett's lungs as they navigated the maze-like streets, towering structures of alien architecture looming overhead. A commotion erupted nearby. A slave had dropped a crate of supplies. Bennett instinctively tensed as a Saurian overseer raised his whip. Reyes gripped his arm, a silent warning. They couldn't blow their cover. Not now. Hours passed as they gathered intel, mapping patrol routes and identifying weak points in the city's defenses. Then they saw it, a massive hangar, partially concealed by a holographic camouflage field. Bennett's blood ran cold as they slipped inside. Row upon row of sleek Saurian warships filled the cavernous space, each jam-packed with weaponry far beyond Earth's current capabilities. This wasn't just an invasion force. It was an armada capable of crushing every human world. "We have to take this out," Reyes breathed, her eyes wide. They worked swiftly, planting high-yield explosives on load-bearing pillars and fuel lines. As Bennett set the final charge, his comm unit crackled to life. "Captain, we've got a situation." Kaderi's voice came through, tight with tension. "We found the research facility, but shit, they've got us pinned down." The sounds of plasma fire echoed in the background. Bennett's mind raced. "Hold position. We're on our way." As they sprinted through the streets, alarms began to blare. Their cover was blown. Saurian troops poured out of buildings, weapons raised. Bennett and Reyes dove for cover, returning fire. A new voice cut through their comms, cold, calculating, unmistakably Saurian. "Humans, I am Altair. If you wish to survive, you will follow my instructions precisely." Bennett hesitated, his finger on the trigger. Could this be a trap, or their only chance of completing the mission? "Your call, Captain," Reyes said, her eyes locked on the advancing Saurian forces. Bennett made his decision. "We're listening, Altair. What's your play?" As plasma bolts sizzled overhead, the fate of two species hung in the balance. Bennett's finger hovered over his comm unit. "Altair, you've got 30 seconds to convince me this isn't a trap." The Saurian's voice crackled through the static. "The Keystone. I know where it is and I can get you there, but we must move quickly." Reyes locked eyes with Bennett, her expression grim. "It's our only shot, Captain." Bennett nodded. "Lead the way, Altair. But if this goes south, you'll wish the Saurians had gotten to you first." Following Altair's instructions, they fought their way through the city's winding streets. Plasma bolts seared the air around them, leaving scorched craters in the alien architecture. They rendezvoused with Kaderi and O'Connor outside a nondescript building, its entrance guarded by elite Saurian troops. "The Keystone's inside," Altair's voice guided them. "I've disabled the inner security systems, but you'll have to handle the guards." Bennett signaled, and Fireteam Omega moved as one. Reyes lobbed a stun grenade, its deafening crack followed by precision fire from their pulse rifles. The guards fell before they could raise the alarm. Inside, they found the Keystone, an artifact of swirling energy contained within an ornate frame. As Bennett approached, strange glyphs flickered across its surface. "Incredible," Kaderi breathed, studying the symbols. "This technology, it's beyond anything we've seen." A distant explosion rocked the building. "We're out of time," Bennett barked. "Grab it and move." They fought their way back to the spaceport, the Keystone secured in a containment field. As they neared their ship, a Saurian battlecruiser descended from the sky, its weapons primed. "Indomitable! This is Fire Team Omega," Bennett shouted into his comm. "We need immediate extraction." The supply ship's engines roared to life as they sprinted up the ramp. Plasma bolts from the cruiser's cannons exploded around them, shaking the vessel. Kadari's hands flew over the controls and they rocketed into the atmosphere. The battlecruiser gave chase, its weapons tearing through their shields. Alarms blared as systems failed. Just as it seemed their luck had run out, the Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace, its massive bulk eclipsing Keelar's crimson sun. "Fire Team Omega, dock in Bay 3, Admiral Graves's voice came through. "We'll cover you." The Indomitable's point defense systems lit up the sky, forcing the Saurian cruiser to break off its attack. Moments later, they were safely aboard, the Keystone secured. As the Indomitable jumped to hyperspace, Dr. Sorensen examined the artifact, his eyes wide with excitement. These inscriptions, they're not just decorative, they're instructions. "Instructions for what?" Bennett asked, still catching his breath. Sorensen looked up, his expression a mix of awe and trepidation. "For reshaping entire worlds." Worlds. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Bennett's mind reeled at the possibilities and the dangers such power could unleash. Years passed. The knowledge gleaned from the Keystone reshaped humanity's understanding of the cosmos. With it came advancements that allowed them to push back against the Saurian threat, eventually leading to the fall of their mighty empire. Now Bennett stood on the surface of Nova Sarthus, surveying the bustling human colony built atop the ruins of the old Saurian capital. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, a constant reminder of the world's former masters. "Perimeter check complete," Kadari's voice crackled through Bennett's comm. "All clear for now." Bennett acknowledged, his eyes scanning the horizon. The peace they'd fought so hard for felt fragile, a gossamer thread ready to snap at any moment. A distant explosion shattered the calm. Bennett's hand flew to his weapon as he sprinted towards the source, adrenaline surging through his veins. "We're under attack!" a panicked voice shouted over the comm. "Saurian insurgents at the eastern quadrant!" Bennett rounded a corner to find chaos. Plasma bolts seared the air, cutting down colonists as they fled. Through the smoke, he caught a glimpse of a familiar, towering figure, Emperor Karendax himself, leading the charge. "Fall back!" Bennett roared, returning fire. "Defensive positions!" The skirmish was brutal and swift. Bennett's forces managed to repel the attack, but at a cost. Bodies littered the ground, human and Saurian alike. As the dust settled, Bennett knelt beside a fallen colonist, closing the man's vacant eyes. Rage boiled within him. This violation of the peace treaty couldn't stand. "Kadari," he growled into his comm, "gather the team. We're going hunting." They tracked Karendax's group through the wilderness, following a trail of destruction. The path led them to a massive temple complex, the very site where the Keystone had been unearthed years ago. "Be ready for anything," Bennett warned as they approached the crumbling structure. Inside they found Karendax and his loyalists waiting. The ensuing firefight was chaos incarnate, made worse by the unstable energies still lingering in the vacant Keystone chamber. Bennett saw Kadari break from cover, racing towards a control panel. "I can activate the temple's defenses," he shouted. Before Bennett could respond, a Saurian plasma bolt struck Kadari squarely in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from the charred hole in his armor. "No!" Bennett roared, rushing to his friend's side. But there was no time to mourn. Karendax emerged from the shadows, his massive form augmented by sleek combat armor. The deposed emperor tore through Bennett's team with terrifying efficiency. Bennett stood his ground, memories of fallen comrades flashing through his mind. Petrov's sacrifice on New Horizons. O'Connor's last stand on Keelar. He wouldn't let their deaths be in vain. The two titans clashed in a fury of fists and energy weapons. Karendax's enhanced physique gave him the edge, but Bennett's unstoppable drive refused to yield. Finally, with a desperate lunge, Bennett drove his combat knife deep into a weak point in the Saurian's armor. Karendak stumbled back, green blood oozing from the wound. His reptilian eyes narrowed with hate. "You've won nothing, human," he snarled, reaching for a control panel. "If I can't have this world, no one will." Alarms blared as the temple's systems began to overload. Bennett's team scrambled to evacuate, but Kaderi lay motionless, beyond help. "Bennett!" Reyes shouted from the entrance. "We have to go now." He hesitated, torn between saving his people and leaving a friend behind. With a pained grunt, Bennett turned and ran, the agonizing choice tearing at his soul. They barely cleared the blast radius as the temple imploded, a shockwave of ancient energies scarring the landscape for miles around. Back at the colony, Bennett stood before Kaderi's grave, the weight of command heavier than ever. The threat might be gone, but the cost had been staggering. As he turned to leave, his gaze fell upon a small family, human and saurian, watching the ceremony from afar. A flicker of hope kindled in his chest. Perhaps, someday, the cycle of violence could truly end. But for now, Bennett knew his work was far from finished. As long as old hatreds burned, as long as rogue warlords refused to accept defeat, humanity would need to remain vigilant. He squared his shoulders and strode towards the command center, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.